Welcome back for another daily news deep dive with us.
Ready to unpack some fascinating stories.
Absolutely. We've got thought-provoking pieces today on AI.
Oh, and academic culture.
Yeah, and even a heated international incident.
Sounds like a lot to cover.
It is, but it should be interesting. Let's jump right in with an article from Daily Philosophy called The Myth of Thinking Machines.
Oh, yeah, I saw that one. It argues that AI can't truly think like humans can.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it lacks things that are fundamental to us, like embodiment and real-world experience.
Right. The author, Matthias Zerkix, suggests that AI operates within a limited framework, relying on algorithms and data.
So it's not really thinking for itself.
Well, that's the argument. It doesn't have that subjective understanding that we get from actually experiencing the world.
That makes me wonder about some of the big claims about AI. Like, can it ever be truly creative?
Or understand human emotions.
Right. If it can't experience the world as we do.
It's a crucial question as AI keeps advancing. Zerkik brings up philosophers like Alvin Noe. He argues that computers are just tools designed by humans.
Not independent agents.
Yeah, so the question is, can AI really change how we understand the world?
If it can't fully participate in that work.
Exactly. It's a good reality check,
Definitely. We need to be mindful of AI's limitations.
And make sure it remains a tool under human control.
Now for something completely different. Let's shift gears to the academic world.
Okay.
A philosopher's blog has 2 entries about conservatives in academia.
Interesting. I haven't read those yet.
The first one is called Conservatives in the Academy,
Yeah.
Voluntary Absence. And then the second part is Conservatives in the Academy 2, DEI for Conservatives.
So they're exploring that perceived lack of conservative voices in higher education.
Right, and they dive into whether it's due to intentional exclusion.
Or individual choices by conservatives.
Yeah, one argument is that conservatives might be drawn to different career paths.
Or maybe they just find the culture and values of academia less appealing.
There's also the debate about diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives.
The DEI initiatives, right? Some people argue that they might unintentionally create an environment that feels less welcoming to those with conservative viewpoints.
It's a complex issue for sure.
How do we create true diversity of thought in academia?
While still upholding inclusivity for everyone.
It's a tough balance to strike.
It requires a real commitment to open dialogue.
And a willingness to engage with different perspectives.
Even those that might challenge our own.
Okay, so we've talked about AI and academia. Now, how about we jump to the global stage?
Sounds good.
Sacerdotis has a piece about a reported clash between Ukrainian President Zelensky and former U.S. President Trump in the Oval Office.
I read about that. It was supposed to be a meeting about U.S.-Ukraine relations.
And potentially a minerals agreement.
But things got pretty heated.
It sounds like a classic example of how complicated international diplomacy can be.
Definitely. It shows how national interest can clash.
And the challenges of finding common ground.
Especially when there's a lot of tension involved.
So what exactly happened in that meeting?
Well, reportedly, Trump emphasized that Ukraine needed to show more gratitude for the support from the U.S.
And he pushed for a ceasefire with Russia?
Even without strong security guarantees for Ukraine.
And how did Zelensky respond to that?
He argued that Putin couldn't be trusted.
Because of past broken agreements.
Right. He was very firm about that.
This situation really highlights the ethical dilemmas that leaders face.
They have to put their nation's interests first.
But also consider global stability.
And the ethical implications of their actions.
Especially when supporting a nation under threat like Ukraine. It was a big deal,
Yeah. The fallout from that argument was pretty swift.
What happened?
Well, Trump canceled a planned press conference with Zelensky.
And Zelensky reaffirmed that Ukraine still needs a just peace.
It really shows how delicate the balance of power is in international relations.
And just how hard it can be to find common ground.
Especially when tensions are running so high.
Definitely. All right, so we've covered some pretty intense topics.
Let's switch gears a bit.
To something a little more introspective.
Sacerdotis has a piece on the 8th Sunday of Ordinary Time.
I saw that one. It's about the concept of integrity.
Yeah, the reflection uses that biblical metaphor of the tree and its fruit.
To illustrate how actions reflect our inner selves.
It's a good reminder.
Yeah, a person with integrity acts in alignment with their values and principles.
Their actions match their words.
It makes you think about your own life.
It does. Are my choices aligning with my values?
Am I being accountable?
Am I living authentically?
Important question.
Absolutely. Now, Sacerdotis also has a review of the film The Unbreakable Boy.
Oh, yeah, I heard about that one.
It's about a young boy with brittle bone disease and autism.
What did they think of it?
The review highlighted the film's portrayal of resilience, hope, and the power of love.
Sounds heartwarming.
It is. The reviewer was really touched by the film's balance of humor and heart.
So you laugh and cry.
Exactly. It seems like a film that reminds us of the beauty and strength that can come from facing life's challenges.
With a positive attitude.
Yeah. And the film also underscores the importance of embracing differences,
Seeing the unique gifts and challenges in each person.
finding strength in vulnerability.
It seems like a powerful counter-narrative to that Nietzsche quote we discussed earlier.
About becoming ashes to be reborn.
This boy finds strength and joy within his challenges.
Interesting. What do you make of that?
Maybe it means that transformation can come from embracing and finding meaning in our current circumstances.
Instead of just dramatic upheaval,
There's beauty and value in diversity.
every individual contributes something special.
And by understanding and embracing those differences.
We create a more compassionate and inclusive world.
Makes sense. Okay, so before we wrap up this part of our dive,
Let's touch on some other philosophical nuggets.
all right, what did you find?
Philosophy Bits had some thought-provoking quotes for Nietzsche, Wittgenstein, and Rorty.
I always love a good Nietzsche quote. What was it?
How could you become new if you had not first become ashes?
Yeah, classic Nietzsche. It's about the transformative power of facing challenges.
Letting go of old patterns in order to grow.
Adversity can be a catalyst for personal transformation.
Then there's this one from Wittgenstein. What is true or false is what human beings say, and it is in their language that human beings agree. This is agreement not in opinions, but rather in form of life.
So it's about the nature of truth.
It seemed to suggest that truth is shaped by language and social practices.
There's no objective truth just waiting to be discovered.
We create truth through interactions and shared understandings.
Fascinating. And what about Rorty?
His quote was, "The standard philosophical strategy of most naturalisms is to find some way of showing that our own culture has indeed got hold of the essence of man. The utility of the existentialist view is that by proclaiming that we have no essence, it permits us to see the descriptions of ourselves we find in one of or in the unity of the natural sciences as on a par with the various alternative descriptions offered by poets, novelists, depth psychologists, sculptors, anthropologists, and mystics."
Wow, that's a mouthful.
I know. But it's basically about challenging the idea of one definitive understanding of human nature.
Be open to multiple perspectives.
Value insights from various disciplines.
Not just looking for one absolute truth about what it means to be human.
All of those quotes really highlight the power of philosophy.
Challenging assumptions, encouraging us to see the world differently.
There's always more to learn, more perspectives to consider.
More questions to ask.
Now let's move on to some interesting discussions from various blogs.
Okay, which ones?
One that caught my eye was called Physics and the Philosophy of Intrinsic Properties from Powassan and Murphy Pam.
Sounds intriguing. What's it about?
It grapples with the question of what exactly are intrinsic properties.
And whether physics can explain them.
The blog mentions David Lewis's definition of intrinsic properties as those that things have in virtue of the way they themselves are,
As opposed to extrinsic properties.
which depend on a thing's relationship to other things.
Okay, so like a basketball's roundness is intrinsic.
While its location on the court is extrinsic.
Makes sense. But what are the implications of that?
It raises questions about the fundamental nature of reality,
Are there properties inherent to objects themselves?
independent of their relationships to other things.
That's a question that has puzzled philosophers for a long time.
Definitely. The blog also brings up Philip Goff's argument that consciousness itself might be an intrinsic property of matter.
So even tiny particles could have some basic form of experience.
Or awareness.
That's panpsychism, right?
Yeah. The idea that consciousness is fundamental to the universe.
Not just a product of the human brain.
It really challenges our understanding of both consciousness and the material world.
Makes you wonder what else we might be missing.
But reality, it's really out there.
Speaking of big questions, Edward Feser's blog tackles the debate around Pascal's wager.
Ah, yes. The classic argument.
It's the idea that it's more rational to believe in God than not.
Because of the potential rewards and punishments in the afterlife.
Feser looks at J.L. Mackey's criticisms of the wager.
Mackey argues that it oversimplifies the choices involved.
And encourages self-deception.
It's a good point.
Feser does offer some counter-arguments, though.
What are they?
He suggests that Pascal's wager might be more relevant when someone finds Christianity plausible but has doubts.
Like they're on the fence.
He compares it to someone like John Nash in A Beautiful Mind, who chose to ignore his delusions even though they felt real.
So using Pascal's wager to overcome doubts and embrace faith.
It's not about blind acceptance.
More about strengthening existing inclinations towards belief.
Interesting take. Now to wrap up our philosophical journey.
I found a quote from Walt Whitman on The Marginalian.
Oh, I love Whitman. What did he say?
They do not sweat and whine about their condition. They do not lie awake in the dark and weep for their sins. They do not make me sick, discussing their duty to God. Not one is dissatisfied. Not one is demented with the mania of owning things.
He's talking about animals, right?
Yeah. Comparing them to humans.
Animals just seem content.
Unburdened by the anxieties and complexities that we humans deal with.
What can we learn from them?
To appreciate the simplicity and peace found in nature.
Maybe question the value of some of our human preoccupations.
It's a call to find balance.
Between material desires and spiritual well-being.
Wow. It's amazing how all these different stories connect back to the idea of perspective.
It really is. We've seen how it shapes everything.
From the capabilities of AI.
To how international relations play out.
Even to the very essence of truth and consciousness.
Zerkich's article on thinking machines made us look at AI's limitations from a human perspective.
You know, it takes more than just processing data to really understand something.
You have to experience the world.
Right. And those blog posts about conservatives in academia pushed us to think about different viewpoints.
Why certain voices might be missing.
Being open to perspectives even when we disagree.
Absolutely. And then there was that clash between Zelensky and Trump.
Highlighting how hard it is to reconcile different national interests.
And those ethical considerations on a global scale.
Even the reflection on integrity emphasized perspective in a way.
Aligning your actions with your values.
It's about making sure your outward behavior matches your inner self.
And then Whitman's quote about animals took us outside of our human-centered view.
To appreciate the simple contentment in nature.
It all points to the importance of perspective.
How it shapes how we see things, how we interact, how we understand the world.
It makes you think about your own biases.
Your assumptions.
How can we cultivate a more open mind?
Engage with different perspectives, even those that challenge us.
That's a great question, and it's a key takeaway from today.
We've gone from AI to international affairs.
To personal reflection, and even animal consciousness.
Hopefully you've gained some new insights.
And a fresh perspective on the news.
That wraps up our daily deep dive. Keep those minds curious, and we'll see you back here tomorrow for another deep dive into the news that matters.